All right. Hey, everyone, welcome to, what is this, Chapter 5, I think, of Apprenticeship Patterns, the CodeNewbie group reading the book by David Hoover and Adewale Oshania. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. I should have looked that up. But, hey, I've got some slides together, so let me go ahead and present those and we can get started.
The infinite window.
What's that?
Nothing.
Where did my... Oh, it's present. That's what you do. There we go. Nice. Okay, can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, so I particularly like the quote. I think it was near the beginning of the chapter. The only people who achieve are those who want knowledge so badly they seek it where the conditions are still unfavorable. Favorable conditions never come. And actually, on Twitter this week, I saw another one that I think Transition tweeted out to Saron from Jerry Rice that was, what is it? Today I will do what others won't, so tomorrow I can do what others can't. They're kind of along the same lines. But I liked those quotes, so I put it in there. All right, so this was about perpetual learning, this chapter, continuing your learning along your journey. I don't recall, it's been a couple weeks since we did this last, I don't recall what the last chapter was called. It wasn't the long road. Was it practice? No, that was one of the patterns.
Visualization or cell. Oh, let me see. Let me look that up. Perpetual learning.
Okay.
It's chapter 5.
Okay, yeah, that's. Do you know what chapter 4 was?
Chapter 4 was accurate self-assessment.
Accurate self-assessment. Okay,
that's right.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so perpetual learning. That's what we're on this week. And the first pattern that was in there was expand your bandwidth. And the context of this one was that you've picked up a basic set of skills, and your understanding is, you have an understanding, but you really need to grow yourself. And the solution to this was essentially to drink from the fire hose. Expose yourself to the onrushing torrent of information and gather up as much information as you can, so that you can expand your bandwidth, as the pattern says. So I guess I formatted my slides here just a little bit differently. Obviously, we're free to discuss whatever, but I tried putting a couple prompts over here that came to mind. So like for fire hoses, there's a lot of different ways, a lot of sources of information, I think. And for me, I think a lot of times those are either getting involved in a project where I just am totally lost and just trying to find all the different things. Like, for instance, if I hadn't done Rails before and I wanted to go build a Rails app, then just learning all those little bits of stuff that goes along with it is, in a way, a fire hose for me, or maybe even just following a bunch of folks on Twitter that are tech conscious. But curious what other folks use when they're doing this pattern, or when they just want to be able to gather information.
I'm too scared of the fire hose, so yeah, I'm interested. What do you guys think of a fire hose is?
I mean, I think like groups like this and like discussion sections like this where you have to, like reading the last book that we read was like a fire hose kind of situation, because I feel like I was still pretty new at that point. I was still like learning. I was like, oh my god, this is like too much way over my head. But gotta jump in like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a fire hose then. Last weekend
Awesome.
I did my first hackathon.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Awesome.
It was it
That'll
was remote.
definitely.
It was remote, and I deleted half of the repo.
Oh no!
I did a late push onto the staging or master branch, and I was just like, oh shit, everything's gone. That was very much a fire hose.
But that's what Git's for. You can roll it back, right?
Yeah, we did, but like, yeah, without everybody being pissed off at me, but that was.
Yeah.
I'm going to study it much more.
Awesome.
I
So,
think
like,
sometime. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was about to say, like, inevitably, hanging out in these groups, somebody will recommend some resource, and I'll like bookmark it. And if I hear about it 2 or 3 times, usually that's when I end up going to it. So, um, like I started one last week on a book called You Don't Know JS, which is all about a deep dive on JavaScript, how it actually works.
Mhm.
And because I'd heard, like, I had people who I know who have been coding for years that were like, this is the book that helped me finally understand what JavaScript is doing. And so I was like, well, I better go. That better be the one I read then.
Nice. I've heard some different recommendation on JavaScript books, and it's. I mean, if I'm hearing that one's a good one, I never really know which one it is when I finally do go and pick up the JavaScript book. Which one it should be.
Well, that one is free on GitHub, so that's a good recommendation for it by itself.
It's an excellent price.
You don't know JS? What it's called?
Yeah. I'll put a link in the chat.
Awesome. I think sometimes getting a new job can be a fire hose too. I mean, there's so many different new things and processes and people, and just everything is new and different. Sometimes you'll have a job that you're just kind of, this is something I've done before, I'm okay with it. But other times you'll jump in, and at least for the first couple months, you're just kind of learning your environment and how people operate in it. Not necessarily a technical job either, but just in general.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. And I think it talked a little bit about, when you're done, once you've gotten your fill of the fire hose, you can't take any more. It's time to retreat into competence. What's a good sign, or from your experience, when is it the right time to kind of back down and give yourself a break?
I think when you've had like too many series of kind of losses,
Yeah.
like when your confidence really does take a hit, and you're kind of like, okay, I can't do anything, I'm a failure. That's when you've got to go back. I feel like I have that a lot. So.
I'm glad someone else experiences that.
Yeah, as long as you can retreat into confidence.
Nice.
It's very much an emotional thing, which is really weird. I mean, because it's not like something you can. It's not digital or anything. It's not like you could see, like, yep, I'm in that zone. I think maybe there's like certain key indicators. That like, if you want to pull your own eyeballs out, that might be something. Or you want to stab somebody, that's like these are thoughts, little red flags.
Right. When you start getting short with everybody, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, that's a good one, I think. All right, what's that? Oh, all right, let's move on to the next one. Practice, practice, practice. This one, you want to get better at the things you do, and you want to develop concrete skills in new areas. So the idea here is that you are working in something and you want to be able to get better at it, but you don't really have room to make mistakes. You have to get it right every time because you're being scrutinized, and well, it is a product, so you don't want to get your bugs in there. So what can you do about that? And they say the solution is to take time to practice your craft without interruptions in an environment where you can feel comfortable making mistakes. And kind of the first thing that came to mind for me, and it's somewhat unrelated to this, was the whole. I think it's pretty common to hear about the 1,000 hours to mastery thing, and I guess off the top, I wanted to get a feel for what other people thought of that concept. I'm not sure myself. I mean, I think obviously the more time you put into something, the better you are at it. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't know. So in a book, I think it's Blank or Drive, or no, not Drive. I don't know. Some book by Malcolm Gladwell. He said that it takes 10,000 hours for someone to become a master of something. 10,000 hours of practice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's.
It's a lot of hours.
It is a lot of hours. I think it
guess,
equates out to like 10 years of like significant work every day.
Right. Yeah, I was about to do the calculations, but I think if that's mastery, then that makes sense. But if you're still at an apprenticeship level, I guess you should be like striving for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can make significant contributions and well before it's 10,000 hour level.
I kind of feel like I was reading this book, Deep Work, Cal Newport.
Ooh, I've been wanting to read that.
He's like my new hero, but he just basically kind of boils down to what we're doing, not being something about like knowing being proficient at some technology, as much as it is learners. New coders aren't like ultimately it's going to be great that you know something, but like in order for us to think long term and like the big picture of things isn't us being expert Ruby coders as much as it is being like expert at learning and inquiring and taking on new material. And so because it's going to keep changing and stuff, and so this idea of practice in 10,000 hours and stuff, I feel like highlights the right thing. So you could get really good that Excel, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then if that's the end of what you're thinking of, you could stop practicing. But that would actually, in the big picture, you might be able to float on by that way, but then eventually it's going to bite you in the butt. So I think practice ultimately is what we're employed to do on a certain level, and to be able to practice well, and so I just thought it was really interesting, and it made me it motivated me to keep going, and it's not so much being the master as much as it is like just like someone it's just about getting there as much or it's about the journey. That's what I'm trying to say. Oh.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, and especially in this field, everything's changing so quickly. You might learn one technology one day, but as soon as you've gotten to a level where you're pretty good at it, then there's another one that's come along that's the one that people are interested in. So, well, it's definitely good to invest in a particular area, knowing how to approach something. Yeah, it's good to go deep, and I think that was the name of the book that you were talking about, right? Deep
Work. Yeah.
It's also good to be able to kind of pick something up and get up to speed up on it reasonably quickly and well.
Yeah. What's the next point that you have, the practice versus deliberate practice?
Okay, so I don't know where I've heard of the concept deliberate practice. Someone probably knows. So the idea of deliberate practice, I think it comes from CodeNewbie, but I could be wrong. The idea is that it's not just doing something over and over again, but it's saying, okay, today when I practice this, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to focus on this thing that I need to do better, and I'm going to really put myself into this so that I can achieve a greater understanding of it. It's not just saying, today I'm going to sit down and do this thing again that I've done before. I guess does that make sense as a distinction?
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess, like doing katas over and over again as opposed to like choosing one thing that you really are struggling with and focusing on that. Would that be
Yeah,
kind of?
yeah, I think so. I think so. That it's more about the idea is that deliberate practice is something that is hard. It's strenuous. It takes a lot of your focus to be able to get through it. It's not necessarily something that you have developed some sort of like mental or muscle memory for.
Right.
I do remember reading about deliberate practice in So Good They Can't Ignore You. It's another one of my hero Cal Newport books. So, but he talks about the study was with chess players, and they did different like study groups. One was just a bunch of kids playing chess, and that's what they would do for like 1,000 hours. And then another group would play chess with people in their own level for 1,000 hours, and then the marked improvement came from there was way more improvement in deliberate practice, which is the idea that you're doing something that's appropriate to your level, and that like comes on to the idea also of experts. And so like experts can see context and stuff, and so they're allowed to like their practice would probably look very complex and very kind of there'd be no boundaries. Whereas like for a beginner, your practice like my practice might be like typing, like getting my typing skills up or working with you know um, basic stuff or copying someone else. So deliberate practice might be different depending on what level you're at.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think it's totally catered to or tailored to the person that's doing the practice. All right, so the next one I have here is permission to fail, which seems to me to be pretty um, tightly or closely related to this one because, when you're practicing as opposed to doing the actual thing, you're able to give yourself the permission to fail. And I think this was mentioned in the pattern. It's been a little while since I put these together, but the idea being that you can, when you're practicing, you can do it wrong, and it's okay, and you can learn from it, and you gain a better understanding of why it's wrong, why you wouldn't want to do it that way.
I feel like that's so much more of an accepted thing like in this industry and in this kind of line of work than it is in other ones because I don't know, I feel like in other places if you mess up that's kind of it. Whereas like there's actually things that you can practice and like things aren't always going to work and people I feel like are pretty understanding of that and I feel like I see that concept a lot come up just like make mistakes like do the wrong thing and see how it doesn't work and then go back and try to fix it.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that in a number of situations I've more about why I wasn't able to do something than when I can sit down and say, okay, I think it's going to be this. Oh my goodness, it was kind of that surprise shock. But I learned I have to dig in and find out a lot more about why things are the way they are rather than assuming just based off of my own luck at guessing at something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think we touched on kata and challenges. Did anyone else have anything about practice that they wanted to talk about? All right, let's move ahead to breakable toys. So this one is, again, tied in pretty closely to practice. They are, this pattern is that experience is built on failure as much, if not more than success, and basically setting up projects for similar projects that are similar to but not the same as your production projects that you can work on and explore and break and learn about the domain that you're working in, but it's not going to ever touch any real product so that you can break them and put them back together and do whatever you want with them. And two things I wanted to give a shout out to on this one is that Ruby Monday and Python Thursday are both working on a group project that is in a way like a breakable toy. You can work together in a group with other people and um, build up this toy in a kind of simulated work environment. Other than that, does anyone have any breakable toys that they've had reasonable success with, or times when they've done something like this with a project?
I mean, my first couple of web apps were all breakable toys. Just like, simple. Like, I think everyone's first web app is like a to-do list,
Right.
and matter of fact, my first probably 20 or 30 projects were all breakable toys. Just stuff that if I broke it, it was not going to affect anyone, but it wasn't going to hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That was the way I learned to write code, was writing. I didn't do any like solve this, don't give me fizz buzz. It was all like write a little app that does this thing.
That's cool. Did you make anything that was solved any interesting problems, or I don't know. I don't know how you come up with the projects, but
not especially. It was all like like I think one of the first things I wrote was like something that if you gave it a class and a race, it would spit out a Dungeons and Dragons character, Pathfinder character for you. Like
okay.
It would roll all the dice, and based on like criteria for like what stats are best for what classes, and what the base stats were for races and stuff like that, it would assign all the stats and spit out your character with their starting stats. Which is like something like nobody ever needs, but it was something fun to write, because at the time I was playing a lot of Pathfinder and I had a pretty good understanding of how to solve the problem.
That's cool. I think it's always nice when you're able to find a project you can work on that you're able to use.
Yeah.
So that you kind of have that incentive, and then when you're done, you're like, hey, look, this saves me time, or whatever it is that you're aiming to do.
Right.
This is kind of a personal question, but did anybody put any breakable toys on the resume, or personal projects?
Yeah. Everything I ever wrote went up on GitHub.
Okay.
And my GitHub, my first link on my resume was to my GitHub account.
Nice.
Did anybody ask about anything, or actually read it?
Yeah, I mean, my employer looked through some of my stuff. They looked through my Rails app, and they looked through some of my more recent Ruby code.
That's interesting. Did they give you any feedback on what they were looking for?
No, not really. Unfortunately, yeah, that's not how it worked out. But I mean, they just if you show that you're actively coding and you're putting out things that actually work, and you have links to the projects that are deployed and stuff.
That's cool.
Works.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right, let's move ahead to. Is that it? Use the source. Okay, so context code is the ultimate arbiter. The programmer's intentions are irrelevant if the code disagrees. Only by reading the code can one truly understand a system. Problem. So how do you find out if your work is any good, given that those around you may not have the ability to tell you good code from bad? Solution: seek out other people's code and read it. Start with applications and tools you use every day. So has anyone here done any group code or I guess solo code reading too? Just looking through code samples and seeing how something was constructed.
I need to do more of it.
Yeah, I do too. I've done a couple, not like a significant amount, and it was an interesting experience. I was just curious if people had done that, what they found out about it, and uh, probably is it better to read good code or bad code?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, that's hard. I think it's helpful like on exorcism and stuff when there's other commenters that can be like, this is bad, as opposed to trying to wade through it and decide it for yourself if you're not in the position to make that call.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
Does
it's really,
anyone? Oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say like good and bad is also really relative. I mean, like I remember somebody on CodeNewbie is saying like, oh, I don't really like the ternary operator. Never use it, and this other person's like, oh, it reduces the number of lines in your code. You should always use it. Um, but then that's what you learn. I guess that's what you learn when you read different code. Is you see that this person probably favors more expressive code, while this person likes it more terse. But the way he orders it is clear. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's
I
the
haven't
type of thing
thinking
you're.
about that, but I don't get it. What's starting?
Hmm?
So that I have strong. So that yeah, I don't know. I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Are you talking about the ternary operator?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm not saying I believe one or the other. I'm just making a
Right.
point that good code is relative.
Right.
For some people, not so relative.
I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, though, because it lets you approach the code from a different direction. You want to write when you're writing the code, you want to write code that is readable, but primarily you want to make sure that code works. But when you're reading the code, you assume the code works, so that's really not your concern. But you're looking at how someone might have made it readable because, well, you're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. So, like, one of the mindsets that I don't remember who told me this, but really early on they said, when I first started, they said, you're writing code for future people, including yourself. And they said, if your code is unreadable, a year from now when you're coming back and having to read your own code, you're going to go, what the hell was I doing here? And I've had those situations where, like, I did something hacky, and then inevitably there was a bug in it, and I come back at it, and I'm like, just a few months later, and I'm like, damn it, I got to go run this regex through Rubular just so I can figure out what the hell I was doing here, or whatever.
Yeah.
That happens to me like a week after I do something. If I don't like write it well the first time, it's just like it's over.
I know I've had the experience where I'll go back and go try to fix some code somewhere, and I'll be like, "Who wrote this horrible slop of code?" And then I'll go look, and it was me.
Yeah.
I've also been pretty good about like trying to keep up good either like Git commit messages or README files on my GitHub. Be like, this is where I left off, and like have like a paragraph description of what I was doing and like what I intend to do next, which has helped me a lot when I like have a project that I leave off in November and then pick it up, yesterday. But
Yeah.
that also takes up a lot of time.
So I used to write like terrible one line commit messages like from the command line. I never went into the file and did the commit message inside the file. I would just always, do the -m flag. And then I went to RubyConf and I went to the talk, and the guy was like, here's what you should put in your commit messages, and should go into all these details and stuff. And then I started doing that, and then I got hired and I went to work. And I was doing that at work, and literally one of the senior devs was like, please stop writing long commit messages.
Really?
Yeah. And he's like, it dumps it into, because, so we use GitLab at work. In GitLab, when you do a merge request, it takes the first line of the commit and then dumps the rest of it into the description of the merge request and creates comments inside the merge request out of it. And so they don't want me writing long commit messages. So I had to go back to my old style.
That's so weird. They can't edit their GitLab.
I don't. It's not worth fighting with them about. Like, it's like I'm the low man on the totem pole. So like, I don't get to pick how to do things. far as messaging goes. But I agree with you. It should be detailed.
That's an interesting point too, though, because like it's, I think, more important, or is it? I guess probably a better way to put it is, is it more important to do your team's way of doing it, or the way that you believe is the best way of doing it?
Yeah, I don't know. It depends entirely on what your
The boss says.
Yeah.
Who is the boss?
yeah,
I mean,
Who's paying?
I'm not suggesting you go around and piss everyone off just because you feel like you know the best way of doing it, but at the same time, if you know you're doing it wrong, is that going to? I mean, is that the point where it's just time to start looking for a new job, or you just learn to come to terms with it, or what do you do?
I don't think it's worth getting in a fight with people at work over how long my commit messages are.
No, I'm not suggesting that with your commit messages that's the issue. Maybe someone really wants to use, I don't know, they really want to use Visual Basic, and you're like, well, hey, I think Ruby is a better alternative for this project.
If they can convince your boss that Visual Basic is the best tool for the project, you don't want to be working there.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's like, like with anywhere else, there's a style guide. Like, I don't particularly agree with my company's like style guide in terms of like grammar stuff. They don't use Oxford commas, and it really annoys me. But
Oxford commas are terrible. You should never use them.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Oxford commas just clutter up the sentence with all those extra marks.
No, it clarifies things.
No, it does the opposite. It clutters.
No, well, I hate not using an Oxford comma.
I actually wrote a blog post one time where I had a list. It was like a list of 77 things you have to learn before you can call yourself a junior dev in Ruby. It was this list that James gave me when I first started out. And I literally wrote, I copied his list word for word, and I put a little comment at the top of the blog post. I was like, I make no excuse for James' liberal use of the Oxford comma in this.
I cannot. I don't know. Well, anyway.
I think it's an East Coast, West Coast thing, because I grew up on the West Coast and no one used it, so I just was used to not having it there. But now that I'm in Texas, there's like, you'll see people who do use it, and I work with people from the East Coast, and they'll have the Oxford comma in there. And, honestly, I don't really care if it's there or not, as long as people don't insist that I do it.
I thought the ternary operator was going to be a rabbit hole.
I know.
I just learned what the Oxford comma was. That's why I was just like, oh, okay.
It's such a heated debate. It's funny that it comes up even in grammar context.
Well, but at least your office like picked a side and said like everybody has to follow the same rule.
Yeah, well, it's also because it's like the lady who does all the copy editing is like really, really particular about it. So if you do something wrong, she will like come into your office and be like, "Do not use the Oxford comma." And so like, it's mostly just to avoid that interaction that I don't use it. It's like not because I like care that it's like I just don't want to get chewed out by a lady down the hall.
I guess I could see, like, if you're writing, say, technical documentation, and you have 3 writers on staff, and 2 of them use the Oxford comma and 1 doesn't, then you're probably going to get on that third person to say, hey, let's make this consistent so that this documentation all reads the same way. And I could totally understand that.
No, what you do is you write some internal app that's incredibly useful, and you name it Oxford comma.
Why do you do that?
You have to use Oxford comma.
Yeah, because then everyone has to use Oxford comma.
Oh, okay.
Does Sir Ron still do this Code Club talk, or the Code Club thing?
I've seen a couple of them up on YouTube. I watched one. I thought it was a really good talk. I don't know. Have you guys seen it?
I heard her talk about it in her in the podcast, but not I've
Yeah,
seen.
yeah,
Oh,
it's
I
worth a
watched
it's
the
worth a
video.
watch.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's just kind of her experience. I think it was her first talk that she had. I think that's what I heard on the CodeNewbie podcast. But yeah, it's her talk of how she got together with a group of fellow learners and friends, and just would get together every week and read code. And I guess that's kind of where CodeNewbie came from.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm laughing in the background. Let me mute myself there. Deez is being a dick in the chat.
In the Slack.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know if that's positive or negative.
It's no more Oxford comma talk, is
But
it?
I do use parentheses because I really like things to be clear. So maybe this
Oh,
is more about a personality thing rather than like.
He's taking a shot at me because I was talking earlier today about how I like to put parentheses around all my arguments in Ruby because
Oh,
it
gotcha.
makes your code more readable and clear about your
It
intent.
Jeez.
Kind of hoisted on my own petard there a little bit.
Maybe I should start using the Oxford comma because I'm learning Clojure, and that language has a ton of parentheses.
Hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
so moving out of the rabbit hole. Reflect as you work. You may suddenly find yourself victim of the Peter principle, where you're promoted to your level of incompetence. Problem is the number of years and projects you have under your belt increases. You find yourself awaiting the epiphany that magically makes you, that will magically make you quote unquote experienced. And the solution: become a reflective practitioner of software development. This involves regular introspection into how you're working. So the two things that came to mind to me for this were retrospectives, being, every once in a while look back and at your projects and see what happened. Kind of the same idea. I'm not even really sure what the difference between a retrospective and a postmortem is, but just, when you're done with something, look back on it and say, this is what we did right, this is what we did wrong, this is how we might do this better, kind of a thing. But what do y'all think about good ways to reflect as you work?
I've been following Thoughtbot's dot files, and one of the things I thought was really interesting was the teacher uses GitHub, and he adds certain files to his dot files to like talk about some of the problems he has, and he records issues he has as he works in as a GitHub issue, and then later on, if he sees that issue more than once, he'll actually code a shell command or something that would fix whatever he's doing. And so he has this running history of his dot commands and how they evolve and why. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, I always thought of like learning and then writing a blog post about it, but to actually use GitHub to like record your thoughts and as you work in your development environment, I don't know how to do it yet. Like I just learned that there's a wiki page to a GitHub, but I think it's kind of an alternative to just writing a long blog post. You can also just put a few lines on some Git file and then just track it.
Seems like it would work better, like more of a workflow than trying to break it up into a blog post since you already are on GitHub anyway. Since you're getting stuff to it.
Yeah, I might use that as an alternative to track kind of what I'm learning. But I still have to learn how it works and everything.
So he was logging GitHub issues. So I'm not sure I understand what.
Oh yeah, so he has dot files and like he's working out of Tmux and he has all these things that he's doing, and then like he'll get to some pain points, and then so he'll make an issue on because he actually he has a remote repo for his dot files.
Okay.
So he'll put an issue. He's like, for example, I hate having to write git status all the time, and then he'll say the context as to maybe a little bit of why that's a pain point or something, like I was working with this repo or something, and then later on in his dot files, you can actually code in a solution to remove you needing to do that, and so he shortened it to like get s, then that would do get status, or gs even, and so you can actually add it to your code base and then track that issue as solved or whatever. But anyways, the idea is instead of just using blog posts to track what you're learning or what you're changing, is to use GitHub itself as this way of monitoring what you're learning and where you're at.
No, that's cool. It's like, I guess, using the project software to kind of hack your workflow.
Yeah, that's making me want to learn it more.
Right on. Now this got me thinking, what if you could somehow do a pull request or something, and then, because I don't know if you've played with that on GitHub, but you can do the kind of line-by-line commenting where you got the little plus, like it'll show you the full file, and you can kind of plus in your comments, so you can kind of pinpoint your comments to certain areas of the code. Might have to look into that.
Yeah, there's a lot of features in it. I wonder to use it as a retrospective or like, even if it's just your journal or something, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, like you could make a branch of the code that you just block everything out and then have that for your comments or something. I don't know.
Or what if you just had a journal of just like markdown files, and then like, you could go back to your 30-year-old self, and see what comments you've made, through the years or whatever. That'd be kind of interesting,
That would be.
Yeah. I wonder if like Clayton's earlier talk about doing long commit messages. I feel like that could be part of it, like what you learned in each commit, like going back and doing it kind of a long paragraph as opposed to just the one line. And then you could almost like compile those into just like one like blog post since they're kind of already broken up into paragraphs. I don't know. I feel like that seems more of like a seamless workflow for me since I already do commits. Like you're going to be having commit messages anyway. I don't know if there's a way to, because can you like flag issues in GitHub or add to the wiki like from the command line or from your, do you have to go to GitHub like .com to do all that stuff? Because I'm under the impression that you do.
I think there are command line tools that interact with the GitHub API, but I don't think that, like you say, I don't think there's a way to do it directly.
Okay.
You guys use Git rebase?
Yeah, we do. It works.
I think
what is that?
It like basically takes all your commit messages and smashes it into like one.
Yeah.
Or you can do other things like separate things out. So it lets you take your history and edit your history basically, which is the thing that I'm just like, okay, I don't know how to do that, but it looks interesting.
Cool.
Maybe that'd be a way to take all your commit messages and just smash them into one file somehow.
Yeah.
The idea of looking back at your Git log and turning it into a kind of a blog post, or I was thinking of maybe like almost like a tweet conversation. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I'm also really bad about like looking back at stuff because for me, I've never really been like finished with a project. I work on projects as much as they hold my interest, but because I'm just doing kind of like breakable toys right now. It's like as soon as they're not fun or I'm not learning anything anymore, it's just kind of like, well, I can just move on to something else that will. I know that's not like the best way to approach things, but that's kind of the stage I'm at right now. So it's kind of hard to do retrospective on something that's not finished, I guess. It's not true, but.
You know, something that I'm really awful at going back and looking at is these YouTube videos that we make for these Hangouts. I literally cannot watch them.
I can't either. If I'm in them, I can't watch them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Too much. Which is too bad. But
I could probably learn a lot from going back and watching one. I just haven't been able to bring myself to do it yet.
Yeah. I tried to do that with the Twitter talks, and I just like was like, I'm just gonna read the PowerPoints again because I can't listen to myself.
This is kind of a big one for me because I'm starting to feel like for me everything is reflection because like I'm the kind of person who like takes an experience and just tries to learn from it. Like for example, New Year's resolutions. Like people trying to lose weight usually fall off like a week later or something, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna diet, and they'll diet for like a week, and then be like, ah, no, screw it, I'm gonna eat this thing. But like, and people would think that of that as a failure, but I think for me that's just an opportunity to reflect and like be like, okay, what worked and what didn't work, because I think that's a healthier way to take things in general. But I don't know, like I've never really. I'm trying to think. Did you guys use this reflection and have it like give you insight to like do things differently? Like as a coder or something.
Mm.
I do find that when my brain gets really kind of like when I get into that mode where I got so many things going on in my head and it's just like driving me crazy because I can't focus on anything. If I can take like half hour to an hour and just sit down with a few pieces of paper and a pen and just write it all out of my head, then that helps me kind of get it out of my head and in front of me where I can then work with it and come up with a plan of how to work through it, and then I'm a lot calmer about it. I don't know if that's necessarily reflecting, but usually since those are the things that I'm actively thinking about, then just kind of being able to separate myself from them and see them in front of me really helps me to move forward.
Mm-hmm. I actually had to talk about that last Wednesday on not necessarily just like not like getting things out of your head necessarily, but like just getting code out of your head, so then you can um, figure out like the best plan of abstracting things as opposed to trying to like draw out your code on the first run,
Mm-hmm.
and having like abstractions in your head that disappear. But yeah, that's kind of the same idea that I was talking about. Just like don't like to get it all out on paper or in the in your in your text editor and
That's cool.
see what you can pull from it.
Nice.
I think the idea of iteration and like first draft is this kind of idea of reflection almost because it's just you're seeing what your brain is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, from then you can see what works in your draft and then throw away what or edit things that aren't really working so well.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Nice. Okay, what's next? Record what you learn.
I'm bad about this.
So this, I guess, goes back to blogging and somewhat on the retrospective as well. You learn the same lessons again and again. You remember doing the similar things in the past, but the exact details escape you. Problem, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And the solution, keep a record of your journey in a journal, personal wiki, or blog. I could do better about this. I think for me, I feel like it's when I've gotten to the point where I can record what I've learned, a lot of times I feel like I'm already working on something new and it's kind of like an anchor on my forward momentum. I don't know, maybe that's just my rationalization for not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm not so good at this.
I feel like I'm better about doing that when I encounter a major problem or like an issue. Like I blogged about, I don't think I actually ever ended up publishing it because I was still in my drafts and I went to look for it when I encountered the problem again. But there's some issue with like Rails not recognizing my style sheets or something. And like I was like, I know I've done this. I know I've dealt with this before. Like it's so annoying. I don't know what's going on. And like went back and I blogged about it because I figured it out. But like when I just like learn something and it works, like I tend to not blog about it. Like it's just the errors that come up and like how I solve them, which is also really helpful. But it also means that I'm like learning some of the same things over and over again.
Did you guys ever go back to something you wrote before to help you refresh something?
Mm,
Like as far as like a blog post or a journal entry or something like that, or
Yeah,
code?
yeah. I think, yeah. For me, I don't think I've ever really gone back to something to be like, what happened there? And so I think that that's part of why I don't. It's hard for me to write for myself. Like, what motivates me more is to write for someone else.
hmm
But then again, it's never good enough. So it's like, so I end up not doing anything.
Yep.
But I do like the idea. Like again, that's why I was thinking of that whole GitHub thing. Is like maybe that there's some level of effort versus payoff, where it's like easy enough to do, but also payoff enough to where you might actually go back to it, where it would make it meaningful. But otherwise, it's hard for me because I don't really go back to stuff. I'll just Google it.
Yeah.
Oh, imagine Googling it and then coming up with your own blog post.
Yeah. That's happened to me before. It's like I have this very specific problem, and somebody has this very specific answer, and look, it's me.
That's
It's
kind
also
of awesome, though, that
yeah,
you solved it once and you're able to just kind of look it up
right. But the nice
publicly.
thing, like what I learned from doing a lot of stuff in college was like you don't write for yourself, and you don't necessarily have to write for somebody else, but like write for your future self. So like that's like a treat that person as a separate person, and like you're writing for them, but you also know that you have like a certain amount of backstory, so you don't have to like fill in all the blanks, but just like because I always get stuck doing like when I write stuff like that, I'm always like, well, I have to explain like every little detailed step and end up writing like a hard old journal entry as opposed to like just something brief.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Which is why I don't do blog posts because I'm always like, I have to write this like huge thing and like explain every little piece. Like that's not true. Like I just have to write the things that I'm like struggling with now, and then I can reflect on it if it's not.
So, uh, when writing blog posts, is it better to keep it short and succinct, maybe like just a little 2, 3 paragraphs, or is it better to write you know the the longest blog post on the topic ever that really goes into depth and explores the different areas and you're able to really get out everything that you think about a topic?
Well, I think I mean, like a lot of the things that I've written about is just kind of like they've been kind of one-off fixes that don't necessarily need a lot of explanation. It's just like this is what's going on, this is why it's happening, this is how you fix it. Like barely even 3 paragraph kind of thing. But I
Mhm.
think if it's like a topic maybe that you've learned, like that's something that you could either just write enough to jog your memory or go into like super depth, like Wikipedia entry level, you know. But
Yeah.
that's like less for me. It's like I'm less likely to finish a Wikipedia entry level type thing. So it's like maybe just doing a summary is like good enough for now until I want to expand on it later. But just getting something out there is better than nothing.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree.
I definitely think my blog posts are really cryptic. They're kind of like almost notes to myself, but I'm kind of tossing around the idea of just kind of separating it, like kind of like having one tab or something or one section where it's just like all the posts that really wouldn't really make sense to anybody else, and then like some front page be like the ones that I think would actually benefit people. But I don't know
Yeah,
if you guys do that at all, or
I sort of do that except for the ones that I think wouldn't make sense to anybody else, such as like keeping my drafts thin until I can figure out how to make them make sense to other people, which doesn't help anybody because then they don't show up in search results and I forget I have them. So it's like, it would be better if I just tagged them, like publish them and then tag them as drafts or something. So it's like people know they're not done, but they're still, for me, unsearchable. Um, yeah, I don't
I
know.
kind of think of also the idea though of like chaining posts. So like if I can make posts relate to other posts, to have like a series for like new people, like this is how you set up Rails or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's even more work. So then I'm like, and is it not
I was about to say that sounds like a fun Rails project.
happening? But there's so much good stuff out there too. I mean, it's really hard because like a lot of people put a lot of work,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't mean to be discouraging, but like in terms of recording what you learn, it's like hard to think that it would benefit someone else just because there's just really good stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah. And what I've been doing, I'm gonna, oh, I've got an echo.
Yeah, I'm hearing it too.
Okay.
I don't know
Okay.
if
So what I've been doing is like some of the like video tutorials I've been going through that I like that aren't super popular, but I mean still have good stuff. I'll just like write kind of like a text version of the tutorial, just like the major steps, I guess, so that like the commands, just so I can look back later and see what they did, like what the steps were, without having to rewatch the whole video. And that's helpful too, because then you like not only do the steps, but you write them out, and then you can, if you have to pause the video because it's an hour-long video, you can go back and pick up where you left off pretty easily. And that's been helpful, but it's also super time-consuming because it takes like twice as long as it would be normally just to watch a video. So it's like the payoff there is kind of, I guess it just depends on the complexity of the video and whether or not you feel like you would benefit from remembering that later. But that's also really hard to tell at the very beginning. So
That's true. I found that a lot of times when I take the time to go write something down, that act in itself helps me to remember it. And I might not ever refer to it, but I don't know. That might be a good tool, even if you're not going to refer to it later, but you do want to remember it. Just writing that down helps that, close the loop and make it so that you remember whatever it is that you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to try that out, though. Typically, when I watch a video, I'm just kind of like, oh, well, I just watched that, and I'm going to try doing it, but I don't bother to take notes.
You'll learn it one way or another, right?
That's right. Or not. Maybe I just copied and pasted it in and moved on. Okay, share what you learn. You know a few things, and people are starting to look to you as a source of knowledge. But the problem is that to become a journeyman, you will need the ability to communicate effectively and bring other people up to speed quickly. The solution: develop the habit of regularly sharing the lessons you have learned. This may take the form of maintaining a blog, running a brown bag sessions amongst your kindred spirits. You can also make presentations at conferences or write tutorials for various technologies and techniques that you're learning. And I just want to pat us all on the back because I think we're doing that right now, hopefully, for someone. I don't know, what do you think about this? A lot of these are pretty closely related. I mean, recording what you learn and sharing what you learn, I guess you could keep them private, but a lot of times putting it out on a blog or whatever is almost part of that process.
Yeah, I definitely feel like a big drive to kind of give back and like share what I'm doing, just because I've gotten so much out of other people, like taking their own time to like help me, or either like help me specifically or like help the community at large, and I feel like I need to contribute back to that. Like that's always been a big part of what I do, or like how I've been learning. So it feels like to me that feels like it's just part of the package. But I guess there are people that just like learn in silos and don't hang out with people like this.
And those
I feel like I
people
gotta-
got to exist, right? I've never seen any of them that like really broke into the industry after, like, without going off to college and getting a CS degree or something. I don't know.
I kind of feel like it's. Do you guys have people that like you tutor or help or something, like to share your learning?
I don't yet, but well, that's not entirely true. I do. I'm a lead for the Ruby on Rails group within the Women Who Code chapter in my city. So a lot of times we have like first timers nights and stuff. So I help people like install Rails and kind of get started and point them in the direction of like resources and help them with that. But it's always in kind of like it's like sporadic. It's not like I help like one person specifically.
I think that's still a big help to people. You may not be as focused on one person, but you're helping a lot of people to kind of get their legs underneath them and start.
Yeah, the biggest hurdle has always been just asking like, well, what's the advantage of, or like why Ruby? I'm like, okay, like sit down. But I just I never really know when to like stop talking about that. So
That's actually how do you answer that? That's actually a good question. I mean, the problem this is solving is it's teaching you to communicate, right?
right, yeah, it's just
What do you say?
Mostly I'm just because a lot of times it's the people that come to our events like that. We have a few. Every now and then we'll have somebody that is already knows one language really well and is just looking to expand more languages. And they don't really need to know the answer. Like they already have their reason. But the people that really ask that are like people that have to learn it for their jobs or don't know anything about computers and want like a crash course into everything. And I kind of have to be like, well, it's like really easy to read. It's not super intimidating, especially for someone who's new. It reads like English, so it doesn't feel like it's necessarily anything super difficult to do. But then once you get into it, it's like you can do all of the stuff that you couldn't do before, and it's just like amazing. But it seems so easy, and it's like obviously once you get more into it, it gets more difficult. But it's like at the very beginning, the surface level, it's just it grabs you pretty quickly if you've never seen anything like that before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I begin with that, and then it's also just like a good. I always mention the community, and it reads nice and it feels nice. It's just but it's always a little bit different depending on what. But yeah.
You should have like props and like.
What?
Oh no, I was just saying that there should be like props. You get like sandpaper. You'd be like, this is assembly language, and then like here's Ruby. It's like this soft like felt thing.
Yeah.
That's why Ruby.
Right. Well, it's because like when they're newbies, it's not saying like, oh well, it might not compile as fast as like C or C++ or whatever. Like they don't care. Like that's not something that's important to them. It's all about like like how fast can I do things with it? Like how fast can I see something happen? Like very fast. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I've helped out like with my there's a local Alamo Code Learners meetup that I've been helping out with, and I don't remember if it was there or somewhere else, but someone had asked me whether or not which language was better, Python or Ruby, and I was like, oh no, because I worked with both languages. They're both perfectly good languages to use, and this is just someone who's starting out and they're looking for advice as to which route they should go, where they should focus their energy, and it's tough answer. Ultimately, I was just like, they're both good languages. It really just go with the one that grabs you.
Yeah, I get that question a lot too, and it's especially difficult because the Python and the Ruby meetup nights are on the same night, so it's kind of like you can only choose one.
Yeah.
Really, so you can't really do both. I mean, you can like outside of this, but. And most of the time I'm just like, well, Python's good for like scientific stuff, I guess. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and I don't really ever have an answer to it because I've never done Python before, except for like I've read Python stuff before, but like I've never done it. It's just like, I don't know. Just pick one that you like and go for it.
Yeah.
One thing I always get is the employable thing, like which one will get me a job.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there an answer to that?
I don't think so.
Yes. They both will get you a job.
Which one will be in terms of like which one's better? Which one was more Get me more opportunity.
What
This is
industry
what
do you want to work in?
Exactly.
We
I think
wanna-
Ruby's what, web dev and DevOps mostly, but you could be working in something else.
So I do Ruby. I don't do web dev or DevOps.
Well, there you go. You just proved me
Um,
wrong, and Ruby's a perfectly functional or capable language. It can do anything, or most of it you want to throw at it.
Yeah. Ruby. Yeah. I don't know. Like Python is generally what, like for, I mean, at least for job wise, it's usually for like modeling data and lots
And
of
sysadmin, I
The
think.
boring stuff. It sucks. It's for boring stuff that sucks.
I got a buddy that's a Python developer, and he spends all day taking seismic data and figuring out like where the fault lines are and stuff like that.
Yeah, it has a number of good modules in it for doing like statistical analysis and stuff that's written in like the most optimized. Like it doesn't even go out to C; it goes out to like, I don't know, Fortran or something, Pascal.
Right.
So it's super good at that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know that it really matters as long as you can find a job and doing something you like.
Yeah, and I know like a lot of people that come to our first time on sites are also already employed somewhere that they're like are like where I work uses Ruby and I want to know what they're doing. Like I just need to be like fluent enough in it to like recognize what's happening. I don't necessarily need to be like an expert programmer. Mm-hmm. So we've got a lot of that too. And sometimes they use both Ruby and Python at their job, so it's kind of like I can't tell you which one to choose in that circumstance. Like I don't know, why you have Ruby and Python in your stack at work, but like whatever.
That's interesting.
But we also like I took a intro to scientific programming in college, and my particular class learned MATLAB. But the like section that was taking it at the same time as I was learning Python. So, like that was my always kind of like I always associated Python with scientific programming because that's kind of the only exposure I had to it before I started with Ruby. And also, I've never heard of anybody using MATLAB outside of that class, so there goes that.
I think it's an academic thing and maybe mathematician thing.
If you're a professor.
That's what I got. I mean, I learned it the class was for scientific programming, and I wish I had taken it freshman year when I was like hard crunching all of those numbers instead of like using cool programs to just spit out data. I wasted so much time.
All right, let's see what else we have. Create feedback loops. Context. The less skilled you are, the worse you are at assessing the skills of yourself and others. Problem: your self-assessment is only relative to the abilities you used to have, and will always lack objectivity. The teams you work with can easily skew your sense of your own competence. Solution: create mechanisms for regularly gathering more or less objective external data about your performance. By soliciting feedback early, often, and effectively, you increase the probability that you will at least be conscious of your incompetence. I think that this particular pattern was written a little bit negatively. At least that was how it came across to me. But I still think it's a good pattern. And it really goes both ways. That like, if you are, really working at your craft and building up your skills, but you're surrounded by people who aren't as interested in doing that, then the feedback you get on a day-in, day-out basis might not be the best. And it goes the other way. If you're on a team that you're kind of isolated, but you're working with other people who are at a higher level than you're at, then maybe you're not getting good feedback either.
Feedback is hard because how can you objectively, like, it's not like you can be like, oh, I improved by 6 points this week. Like, it's
wouldn't it be nice if it was that easy?
Right. Like, that would be great. But unless you have someone who's kind of like unbiased and objectively being like, okay, this is not correct. I don't know. That's a difficult one for me.
Well, let's just like start by like naming off what are potential metrics. You know, like one of them's like number of pomodoros you do a day, or
Ooh, do
number
you
of
do
lines of
Pomodoro?
code. Yeah, I love doing them. I mean, sometimes like today I did one. Yesterday I did 6. I mean, like this was something. Yeah, that was kind of a wake up call. I mean, but yeah, I guess to kind of roll back, besides pomodoros, like what are some other things that you guys think might be relevant metrics in determining, either you're trying hard enough or you're good enough or something.
I feel like like the GitHub, like the little green square things is a good place to start, just like making sure you're doing something every day, which I am not. At least I'm not pushing stuff up GitHub every day, but I should be. So I feel like that's a good place to start for like if you're not doing that yet. But then past that, I have no idea. Like I don't know.
I like the parallel to TDD that is here, the kind of idea of closing your feedback loop and making it as small as possible. So I'm going to throw that out there as if you are able to put some sort of, test to see that your code's working, that maybe that's a feedback loop. I don't know. It's not exactly what they're talking about, but it's an interesting parallel.
I kind of feel like that's what Stack Overflow was for a lot of employers. It's like take the top of the score, those with the highest Stack Overflow number would be, marketable or something.
Yeah.
Stack Overflow has a point system.
Yeah, you get a user profile, and then you have to have 50 points before you could even comment on other people's code. And then another one is what's it called? Free code count. Have you guys seen that one?
Mm-hmm.
When people thank you, you get like a brownie point.
Nice.
And so in a way, you can kind of see who's the most helpful by the ones with the most brownie points.
So I guess one of the unexpected pleasures of using Exorcism is the feedback loop that you get there. I thought that I would really enjoy the puzzles themselves, but I think Clayton mentioned this too, that getting that feedback, seeing what other people did to solve the problem after you've gone through and worked on it is a nice feedback loop.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I'm just starting the JavaScript exorcism stuff like tonight, probably when we get off this call, and I'm really dreading going back to being the guy who has the worst code.
Put on the white belt.
Yeah.
Yeah, putting on the white belt.
How does it feel?
Yeah.
Retreat into confidence.
Back to Ruby.
But not too
back to
quickly.
Well, we're really good at reading books. Jeez, they're just like throwing them at each other.
So yeah, comprehension.
So I guess on a side note, how do you do exorcism in JavaScript? Are they using like Rhino or V8, or do you? What's that?
It's a testing framework in JavaScript.
Okay. Does it live in your browser, or where does it?
Yeah, it uses Node.
Okay. I guess.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's always kind of been one of the barriers to entry for me in JavaScript because I'm not so interested in the DOM and the browser when I'm working on a language, and that probably sounds awful, but it's just not where my interest is. So having to get the browser bundled with everything kind of...
Yeah, so I felt the same way, though there are some neat things about JavaScript now that I'm really getting deep in, or up deep, as deep as you can get as a newbie into it. One of the cool things is super easy to just get started on JavaScript because you can go to any web page and hit Control-Shift-I and click on console and start writing JavaScript.
Mhm.
That was something I didn't know until a week ago.
Yep. I built my first um, interactive website thing with just pure vanilla JavaScript. No jQuery, no libraries, just it's really dumb and super slow, but I did it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was kind of cool just to be able to hammer it out in the browser and then figure it out as opposed to refreshing every time.
And so the console REPL, I guess that's the way to describe it. It's a REPL basically. The console REPL has nice things that I don't have in Vim, like auto completing, so I know that I'm never misspelling a method call, which is super nice. I will say that I'm not a big fan of JavaScript's errors. They're actually worse than Ruby's errors, which is pretty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm learning. The testing framework's helpful in that. It goes, I was expecting this and got this.
That's cool. Any other feedback loops? No. Okay.
Should money? Sorry, this is a bad one. Should money ever be a metric?
Oh, I don't know.
Sure, why not?
I feel like it should be factored in. It's something to consider, certainly.
Yeah.
But it's not I wouldn't put all, be I am a, $100,000 a year programmer.
No.
I guess people say that actually.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You can be way overpaid or way underpaid.
Yeah. I know developers who are way underpaid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're getting paid what you think you're worth, that might be a good metric.
Well, I mean, in that case, what about happiness? Are you guys? Is that a metric?
Ooh.
That's also hard to quantify.
Oh, but it's definitely there. I'm a much happier person than I was with my last job.
Yay!
My wife has noticed this quite a bit.
That's awesome.
My quality of life drastically improved in the last few months.
Nice.
There's a good feedback loop. Your wife.
Yes, she's very good about letting me know when I'm not in a good mood.
This will give you guys a vocabulary, instead of being I hate you. It's by the way, here's a feedback loop point. Not really happy with you right now. Feedback loop. I'm sleeping over there.
we should bring some of these. So, that sounds dumb, but actually, so I've never done couples therapy, but I know people who have, and one of the things they teach you in couples therapy is, if something bothers you, don't drag it out 6 months. Give them a nice, quick, give them something to respond to in the short term before it blows up into something terrible.
That sounds a lot like coding to me.
Yeah, no, it's the same kind of concept exists there. Yeah, don't let it just sit there. Don't let the problem get bigger before you try to fix it.
Right.
Wait, are you implying that my code can hold a grudge?
Yes. Technical debt. Technical debt is your code's grudge against you.
You don't understand me. That's what your code's saying.
Yes, and then eventually you and your code have to get a divorce. And that is called throwing it out and starting it over.
Getting a new job.
Not you, it's me. Okay. That's
Put this in context we can all understand.
Yeah.
I should write the book. Coding the Coder's Guide to a Happy Relationship.
That would probably be a bestseller, honestly.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it.
I think that would actually be a pretty awesome.
You're yeah, don't build up too much technical debt in your relationship. Quick feedback loops are important.
And you can get quotes from like famous technical people to put in the front. Like, I never really understood people until I read this book.
Wow.
Git commit, I do.
I'm happily married with my Mac. 5 years.
My partner gives me such better syntax errors now.
This is a great book. We should write it.
Wow.
Yeah, we can have a book club about it.
Yeah. Oh. Huh.
Well, now you got your first bestseller.
Well, we've recorded it, so if anybody else writes it, I can sue them for stealing my idea.
That's true.
There you go.
Wow.
All right,
All right, I'm get. Yeah, that's probably a good stopping point, don't you think? Are we done?
we got one more. I think.
One more.
Learn how you fail. Failure is inevitable. Your learning skills have enhanced your successes, but your failures and weaknesses remain. Seek to identify the ways in which you tend to fail and try to resolve those that are worth fixing. I think this has to do with that retrospective thing, and I'm pretty sure I said I wasn't good at that. Yeah.
Hey, that's pretty good. You just identified a way you failed. You fail at retrospection.
I fail
Yeah.
at learning how I fail.
Well, that's an actionable item.
There you go. All right, I completed this one.
Yay. I feel like for me, like, I know I fail in productivity ways. Like, I don't make enough time. I don't give myself enough time to do things. And I feel like Pomodoro was really helping with that, because I work well to micro deadlines, but not on like, oh, I can just finish this whenever kind of deadline. So I know that's how I fail, and I am working really hard on it, and it is very difficult. So there's that.
It's tough.
Yeah. I think right now, like I haven't. I'm trying to get a job, but I haven't really applied to anything yet. So.
Well,
I mean,
That's
I should
a
be.
good first step there.
I'm having
So
trouble reconciling those two phrases in my head.
Like I haven't won the lotto, but I don't buy the tickets. It's kind of weird. But yeah, no, I think that's definitely where I'm struggling with. And I talked to one of my buddies, and I'm just like, man, I don't want to put myself out there because I don't want to get rejected. But yeah, he showed me the rejected.us site, and I'm just starting to realize it's a part of life, and like, I feel like, yeah, I just need to get over it. Like, it's just, I need to be able to put myself out there.
I applied at probably 25 places before I got a job.
that's so many applications.
That is.
I would make myself do like, all right, I'm going to do 4 of them today. And
Did you write like cover letters and everything for each one, or was it a kind
anywhere
of
that offered anywhere that offered the opportunity to do a cover letter, I would write a cover letter. I would try to spend 10 or 15 minutes finding out what they did and something specific about the company that was relevant, that I could do something, that I could include that was relevant to what I knew, and try to add that into the cover letter.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Yes.
I guess. How did you put
I was
your
really trying to get a job. I wanted to change industries badly.
How did you put your resume together? If like for me, that's where I'm at right now too. It's like I've never coded it as a profession, and like I'm seeing these like.
I made a Google Docs document that was, I read some other resumes, made a Google Docs document, and from a shitty template, and added my own information into it, deleted the stuff that wasn't relevant, and made it look halfway decent. And I have no idea if that was helpful or hurtful, or nobody ever gave me any feedback one way or the other.
My resume is like because I come from a graphic design background, and that's like a big part of like how I market myself.
Mm.
My resume is mostly just like it's very like artistic. I think it doesn't have any of my job history on it, because I assume that if they really want to look into me, they're going to go to my LinkedIn. So I have just kind of like a blurb about like my design skills, my development skills, and like kind of like an overview into like my educational background. And then I have like, if you want to learn more, go to like my
Mm.
website, and that redirect them to my GitHub and my LinkedIn and everything, which is also on the bottom of it. But like, and I've the only interview that I've had so far. Um, I mean, like, well, I was a phone interview, and she was like, "Well, let me pull up your LinkedIn real quick." So like, she didn't even look up my resume. I don't think. I mean, they probably looked at it, but then she like was referencing my LinkedIn from there on out. So it was like, I don't know. I don't. I mean, I just don't know like how much people look at resumes and like have them in front of them and like read. I mean, obviously you need a good resume, but like I don't know how much more information you put on there that you wouldn't have on the internet already.
Totally.
Resumes are tough. I've had the opportunity to look over people's resumes. I've never been the one pulling the trigger on like hire this person or that person, but I've had the opportunity to give feedback on them before, and it's tough. A lot of them look very similar, so being able to
Mm-hmm.
stand out from everyone else could be a good advantage or it could be a disadvantage if it really depends on who's looking at it.
Yeah,
I
that's
think you're,
what I was kind of worried about. I think like the HR people, like I probably get their attention, but I don't know if it makes any difference with when it
What do
gets
you
to
think?
like the actual technical people, you know?
Yeah.
I think your best bet is to have a resume with all the relevant information on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then just go to meetups and just have a be really active on your GitHub account.
Hmm.
And like the resume is not going to be what gets you your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
The
So I don't mean to bogart this one. This really helping me out. Uh, how do you guys fail? You guys
Every
need any
day.
advice? Okay.
I suck at naming really bad.
uh, I'm pretty bad at naming too.
Yeah, I got burned by it today. I got to rewrite some stuff that I wrote like 2 weeks ago because now the context has changed and my naming sucks.
I think there is. I mean, I've definitely done the getting over specific and then finding out that I named the wrong thing, and
Yep.
I've also done the like too general. So like everything all kind of means the same thing, and I can't tell them apart.
Yeah, I know. I got cute and it bit me in the ass. That's what happened.
Oh no.
That's usually what happens. I get cute and it bites me in the ass.
Okay.
I didn't do what everyone else had already been doing, and then I realized, oh, there's a reason they've done it that way every time for the last however long. And now I get to go rewrite some of my code because the one cute situation that I set that context up for was not adaptable to. Fortunately,
Uh,
I caught it before. Fortunately, I caught it when it was only like one or two files I got to change, and not, and it, with it like less than 100 lines.
yeah.
When we have stuff out there that is 1,000+ lines of code.
That's tough, especially like I know I've been in a situation where I come in and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do something awesome and really, apply what I know here and try to make something meaningful, make a meaningful contribution, and then, I'll realize a couple weeks later that oh, this doesn't work because of X, and I should have really paid attention to what's going on.
You know, live and learn.
Yeah.
They're just glad right now when I don't introduce bugs because I'm the new guy. If I don't introduce bugs, they're happy with me.
That's good.
Good place to be.
Yep. All right, and I think that's all I got here.
These maps are so crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure how helpful they are.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, if you're a visual person, like I'm a visual person, so like it kind of makes sense, but it also like I feel like it's pretty clear in the context of everything how everything relates, but helpful. Also, it's probably a lot of work to put those together. I think that's a lot of like drawing arrows.
Yeah, someone had a lot of fun in Visio. Although I'm kind of curious how they made a bent line.
Yeah, or like honestly, they could have made that in PowerPoint.
That's true.
Hey, Mary Catherine,
Mhm.
what is the else if for JavaScript?
The what?
Like, Ruby has else if,
Oh,
else.
I think it's just. I think it's if. I want to say it's like else if like written out, or
Okay.
like ELSEEIF. I think.
Okay.
'Cause I remember thinking it was weird that Ruby leaves out
Combined it.
something. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'm doing something else wrong. Okay.
Well, that could. I mean, that could be wrong. I haven't done JavaScript in like a year or two, but
It's else if, but then the curly brackets are really weird.
Yeah, don't forget your curly brackets.
There's a block.
so many curly brackets.
Oh yeah, blocks everywhere. But they're not Ruby blocks, so they do things like leak scope, which I'm not a fan of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's else space if.
I really hate wasting.
All right, well, I'm going to wrap up this broadcast. So thanks everyone for joining, and hope to see you next week.
Yeah.